administrator in the public domain. You understand? Because the area, the house tells you where. And we're talking about the public, the career, the community. And we're talking about Capricorn, which is the administrator. So I will be administrating in public. You get that? See how you put those together?
So how did your son end up there? Sorry.
It's just where the sun was sitting. When I was born, it was sitting 17 degrees in the sign of Capricorn, or the constellation of Capricorn. Okay? At the time of my birth. And then the same with the moon and the sign rising. Okay. And then after that would be Mercury. And my Mercury, what sign?
Sagittarius.
All right. Somebody's learning here. Okay. And I'm going to tell you something. Me and details, we don't mix. We do not mix. You know what I'm saying? I can be in a car and ride around in that car all day and get out and can't tell you what color it is. But ask me the meaning of life. What did you talk about? You know, what's the universe saying? Oh, I'm all there. You know what I'm saying? And one of the reasons for that is because my Mercury sits in its opposite. See, remember the opposite? Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, third house. Opposite that is the ninth house. So your Mercury represents your conscious mind. Okay? So what's happening here, that represents the details. You know, the education, communication, bringing together all this information. Okay? And see, what happens is that you take that and you bring it into its opposite, Sagittarius, which is philosophical thinking. You know, it means it takes those information, those details, and take it into a spiritual wisdom. See? Gives you the bigger picture. So that's why I lose the small details, because it's like spread it out. This is the house of expansion. You know, so I can look at the bigger picture, but it's hard for me to focus on those small details because it's like Mercury's in its fall. You know, it's in its opposite. It's in its opposite, so, you know, I can grab those details, but they automatically go into a bigger scheme. See?
I have a quick question.
Okay.
What causes Mercury to go into retrograde?
Well, yeah, not just Mercury.
Oh, that happens.
Mercury is just more frequent with Mercury than any other planet. But they are. Mars is one, with just this past last year, around March. Mars went into retrograde. And that happens. That's an unusual thing. That happens like every 2.5 years, and that means we had a lot of friction. Because Mars is that aggression, that fighting, and what it was doing was exposing things. When it went into retrograde, it was exposing things that had to be exposed, which was causing a lot of fighting between people because, you know, that had to come out when Mars went into retrograde. They all go, but, you know, the sun and the moon go. But, yeah, but they don't, Mercury goes more frequently. So when Mercury goes into retrograde, though, and it usually goes into retrograde for about 3 weeks or so. I think you said we're in one now, right? And that's the time when Mercury rules, like I said, communication. So things like short-term transportation. So those are the times when your car will break down. You know, those are the times when your fax machine messes up, your answering machine don't take its messages, you know. And they say don't sign contracts because you'll have to redo it all. You'll have to redo it all. So that's another thing you can look at. When Mercury's in retrograde, try to stay away from finalizing things. That's the time to go back over things, to review things, you know. But don't finalize them until after that's out of retrograde. And what it means, and when it goes into retrograde, it doesn't actually happen, but, you know, like we're always talking about the technical details of things. When planets go retrograde, it's like they stop. You know, like I told you, they're circling, they're always moving. Well, it's like they stop They slow down, they stop, and then they start going backwards. Okay? You know, and then they'll stop again, and they'll start moving back forward again. And they say when you're like I have what's that? My Uranus, which is here, is retrograde. Okay, so they say that when you look at a person's natal chart and they got more than 2 retros, give that person a second look because there's something special going on there. Because it's like you're being painted with the energy brush 3 times. When the planet moves forward, it stops, goes back, and then moves forth again. So there's extra emphasis being put on that area.
How many say more than what?
More than 2 in your chart. It's like there's a special significance to that. Yes.
What does that retrograde sign look like? Does that look kind
This
of
is an R. Like when you look in your ephemeris, and we're gonna get into this next week. I got some ephemeris. I got a March that I'm gonna bring and pass out. But when you look in your ephemeris, see if I can show you. See.
kind of like a medicine?
Yeah.
It looks like an RS.
Yeah, right here. Yeah. When you see that at the end of there, that means it's retro. Okay? And when you're looking at it at ephemeris, it'll be at the top of the column. You know, you'll see a little R in there. That means that planet is retrograde. And sometimes they'll shade it in. You know, that means that planet is in retrograde. And see, remember what I said about opposites? You probably do. Remember what I said about opposite signs? Okay, when that means that when it's moving forth, it's in a physical rotation. Okay, but when it's going retro, then what is it in? Spiritual. This is a spiritual rotation. See, it's in a spiritual rotation. So that just means special emphasis, special oomph is put on that area. So there's some significant reason why that is your energy brush is being painted 3 times in that area, because that's gonna, you're really gonna have to step up to the plate in that area for whatever reason, but you'll find out.
Wouldn't that also mean that you would need like more work with yourself for that? Because it's like going back. So would it be like trials?
Right. It's working more inside. You understand?
Because going back.
Right. It's spiritual. So that means that what's going on is being, you're getting some internal. You're getting some internal lessons. Okay. And it's going to take you out of that physical and make you go inside.
Okay, so your retrograde is in Cancer.
Uranus is my planet. The planet.
Your planet, Uranus, was in retrograde.
Right, when I was born.
So the energy dealing with Uranus and Cancer would mean that it's
And
going to be dealing with like your nature part. The mother.
Right. See, my nurture, my home,
Okay.
my family, and which is exactly what happens. See, Uranus, remember, is the rebellious energy. It's rebellion. And this is opposite what? My son. So what it's saying is, and this is in my house of the home. Okay? So what it's saying is somewhere, I'm going to break away. I'm going to rebel when it comes to my home, and move out and, come more in, which happened because, I left my home, Omaha, Nebraska, and just came here, and started all over. So I left, I made that change. I rebelled from my home and moved away. See, that's what it indicates. And there was a significant reason for me to do that. It was a significant reason for me, to end up here in Atlanta, and because it all connecting those 2 opposites. One's the public, one's the home. See. So, and Mercury, and then after that is Venus. And My Venus is also in Sagittarius, but it fell into my 8th house. Okay? But it's in Sagittarius. Okay? Okay, don't forget, you guys. I told you now. It's all this. Maybe what I should have did was see.
See, no, you got Sagittarius with there twice.
I know.
Oh,
I know what I'm doing here. 13 degrees. 20 degrees. See, each cups, you know, this here is 15 degrees. This is 6 degrees. This here is 28 degrees. And see, this is also 28 degrees. This here is, and then you'll start seeing, these are going to repeat. Opposites are going to be the same. 13, yeah, see, yeah. This here, yeah, what is it, 20?
15, 28.
Those are opposites. Okay? Now, what I mean by that, why that happened is, what I'm saying here, my rising sign, okay, that started 13 degrees in Aries. It runs 30 degrees. Somewhere here, this ran up to 30 degrees. It changed over into the sign of Gemini while it was still in my first house. Does that make sense? Do you get me? Huh? Yeah. Maybe I should use a planet. It would be easier if I use a planet here. Okay. Uranus is 11 degrees in Cancer in my 4th house. Okay? Now, what's going to happen is that Cancer, Uranus is going to click 12 degrees, 13 degrees, 14 degrees, 15. Matter of fact, it was at 28 degrees when it crossed over this line. It was still at 28 degrees. It hadn't quite ran out its, it hadn't quite ran out its 30 degrees. So that means it crossed over into another house.
You still had a little Cancer in the 5th house. You still had a little Cancer going in the 5th house.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Right.
For 2 degrees.
For 2 degrees. But because it was, Cancer was on this line, that still means Cancer is more in control of this 5th house too. So that means Cancer is actually in control of 2 houses. And I lose my Aries energy, my Leo energy is what's called, we don't want to get too technical, but it's intercepted. That means it's buried. You know, because then I get, my Leo is here. And then it's my Virgo that gets buried. My Virgo gets buried. Okay? And it's what you call intercepted. It gets buried because the Leo started here, and then Libra will start somewhere in here. That means that my Virgo is somewhere buried in between those two energies. Yes.
Okay, so each sign doesn't necessarily have 30 degrees, it's just the houses have 30 degrees.
No, they both do. But I started at 13.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I mean, but how can one sign get stuck in a house that only has 30 degrees? If it's 30 degrees too, when it overlaps somewhere?
The houses are, I don't know how to explain that, but the houses are of different sizes. And please don't try to get me to explain that when, we're getting a lot more technical than my non-detailed mind. It's going to take you, but it is possible for a sign to be integrated within the two, and it has more to do with the size of the houses, and everything. So, but that can happen.
We'll be able to figure all this out from the notebook, right?
Yeah.
As we go.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm kind of like,
I'm trying to follow on this.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm like,
Maybe
Okay.
the degrees is not something.
yeah, I mean,
You want to get into that right now?
Well, no, I mean, I'm just trying to give you, you know, I think you
That's
guys.
where the cups will come in.
Yeah, that's why I tried to explain the cups and everything. But I think you guys are trying to get a little more
sort of,
Right.
technical than you really need to. You know, it's not like you're going to be actually drawing up, you know, calculating charts here. Take my word for it, okay? 30 degrees for each sign, 30 degrees for each house, okay? Okay? So yes, there can be overlap, and there can be intercepted houses, okay? And then, where was I? Venus, so, okay, so that's why, see, what happened here is that, you see, that's this Libra energy, no, Scorpio energy. Yeah. See, what happened was, it crossed over, this is Scorpio, okay? And it crossed over as Scorpio, but then it was 20 degrees, so that means it only had 10 more degrees before it ran out when it got into my 8th house. And that's when the Sagittarius took over. And that's where my Venus was sitting 7 degrees in Sagittarius in my 8th house after it had ran out of its Scorpio energy. You understand? Does that make more sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's why I have 2 Sagittarian planets in 2 different houses. Okay. Okay. And then the next is Mars, and mine is, my Mars is in Libra, and it's at like 24 degrees in Libra. Now, remember what I said about your physical body? Mars represents your physical body more than any other planet, see? And in one of these books I was reading, this one here, that this one here breaks down. This one here, if you know your time of birth, you can find out your rising sign. I had this on the book list, you guys. This is a valuable tool. Right, writing your own horoscope. And what happens is that it'll actually tell you, it'll break down what it means to have my ascendant in Aries. What does it mean to have my Mars in Libra? What does it mean to have my Sun in Capricorn? Or, well, everybody will tell you that, what it means to have your Sun. But where are your other planets? This will tell you what it means to have your planets, the other planets, in what sign, see? And in mine, it was saying if you have Mars in Libra, then it says you're attractive now. That's not me. I'm too modest to say that. But this is an indication, because what did I say about Libra energy? It's the attractive people. So if Mars represents your physical being and mine sits in Libra, that will give me my attractiveness when it comes to your physical body. See? Does that make sense? Okay? Okay. So if you want to know about your how you are physically, look at your Mars. Okay? And, this is really in its fall because it's in its opposite, isn't it? Mars rules Aries.
right.
See? Which means that that's your fighting energy, and it's sitting in the sign of peace.
Yeah.
Get it? So I would probably be, I will be subtle in the way that I fight. Yeah.
Justice, right.
Yeah, I'll be subtle in the way that I fight. I want to make sure that I fight fairly, So those are like 2 opposite concepts, coming together. See? So just trying to get you the feel of it. This is all I'm trying to do, get you the feel of how these energies work here. And then the next one after Mars would be Jupiter. And mine is, now here we go again. Now mine is in the 12th house, but it's at 6 degrees Aries. Now you see why? It didn't cross over till 13 degrees. See? Didn't cross over till 13 degrees, so 6 degrees Aries would still be in the 12th house. Which means I'm dealing a lot with my subconscious. Remember, the Jupiter is the great expander. Expands on everything, spiritual wisdom. So that means I'll be dealing with a lot of spiritually wise, concepts within my subconscious. Okay. As a matter of fact, when I was a little child, I used to pray for wisdom. Didn't know why. Didn't understand why, but it was always in my prayers. Let me have wisdom, But it was meant to be. That's what I was, being activated or influenced to do. Okay, anytime. So, and then the next is Saturn, and I also have a Libra Saturn, and that's like at 14 degrees. That's 14 degrees. And this means that, remember what I told you, wherever you find your Saturn at is where you have your life's lesson. That's going to be my hardest struggle, is dealing with partnerships. That's where my life struggle. That's where I'm going to be tested the most, but that's where it's going to mean the most. See? So, that's what it means. And then we have, next after that is, I already put it down here, Uranus. And Cancer. And wherever you find Uranus is where you're going to find the most unique situation. So, my home life. I had a very unique home life. Very unique. Very different. Unusual. That's what that indicates. Where you find Uranus, that's where you're going to find your uniqueness at, what is different. And then after Uranus is Neptune, and mine sits in the middle of here, in Libra, at 21 degrees.
Wow, your Libra is big.
Yeah. That's what you call a stellium, when you have 3 or more in one sign.
And what does that mean?
Just means that that's a major energy point for you. Major focus. Major area of prominence. Partnerships, So, and then the last one.
Before you go on,
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean?
Neptune,
Yeah.
there
In Libra.
in Libra, and I think I had kind of demonstrated this once before when we were talking about your partner. When you want to know who you attract and who you're attracted to, you look at your Venus. Mine is in Sagittarius, so I'm looking, and as a matter of fact, my ex-husband of 25 years is a Sagittarius. See, so that's what you're gonna see. All this is you. And you attract who you are, what you put out. This is the energy I put out, so it's what I'm going to bring back to me. See? It represents who I am, and those are the signals I'm putting out. So, when we talk about Neptune, so like I said, you look at your Venus to find out about your relationships, who you're attracted to, your traits. They call Sagittarius the bachelor sign. They're wild, free, free-spirited, It's hard to tie them down, See, they call them the bachelors or bachelorettes. But then after you look at your Venus, you look at your 7th house. Because that's the house of partnership. So whatever sign is sitting on that cups gives you the trait of the partner you're looking for.
That's that right there.
Uh-huh.
So you're looking for Saturn?
No, I'm looking for the sign. I'm looking for someone with Libra qualities.
Oh,
Okay.
a good-looking dude.
Yeah. The good-looking dude.
Attractive.
Yeah, the fair. Yeah.
I thought you meant Saturn. It's
No,
like,
but
wow,
what?
like you're right.
Now the planets, like Sister was asking me about, the planets give you some more indications of what's going on there. Now, I do want somebody aggressive because my Mars is there.
Right.
And I do want someone, and then sexual, let's not forget sexual here. I do want somebody spiritual. I do want someone spiritual. Okay, spiritual. Because Neptune is there. And Neptune deals with spirituality.
Yeah.
But it can also indicate
Deception, right?
deception. So I can delude myself when it comes to partnerships. I can fool myself. Or I can be easily fooled. Or I can fool someone else. I can fool my partner. You know? I can put up this deception when it comes to my partner. You know, so it depends on how you use that energy. Either I want somebody spiritual, or I want somebody, you know, or like, okay, you know, it could bring some unfavorable,
Right.
you know, some unfavorable things there. And then the Saturn would say that I want somebody steady.
Black man.
That's right. That's right. You know, and
Revolutionary.
as a matter of fact, they say Saturn is in its exaltation in Libra. It's exalted
Okay.
in Libra. That means it works at its finest in Libra. Okay? So that's justice and harmony. Because if we're going to equate Saturn with the black people, then what are we bringing to this world if it's not harmony and justice and fairness? See? We're exposing the injustice.
Right.
Right. Okay, and then the last one is by Pluto. And that's in Leo at 21 degrees. And let's see, Pluto, see, the farther out we go on the planets, the more it becomes a generational thing. That means those in my generation would also have a Pluto, a Leo Pluto, right? And that would probably be true even for Neptune. Most people in my age range would also have a Libra Neptune, okay? It just depends on what house it's sitting in. You know, that makes the difference. Yes?
You know, that's deep that you said that, and it's how the world is, like a certain, like you had your generation of the 60s. All people had that same karma.
Right, absolutely. And that's what this book here, Planets and Signs, it will show you, it'll show you what generation, you know, what it means to have, which generation has whatever their Pluto and Leo, it'll tell you what that generation's charge is, you know, for whatever planet. So,
Get on the list.
no, you know what, that wasn't on the list. You can add that to the list. Planet and Signs. It's planet is SKYE. Sky.
Sky.
Alexander. Okay. And that will be true for Pluto, which is the farthest out, and Neptune, which is the next farthest out. Now, you may get some, some flex here in Uranus, but depending, probably within the, in a certain range, you have the same, because they move the slowest. Planets that are farthest out it takes the longer to affect you. Okay, and in other words, it just takes it the longer to unfold. But that's the more long range change, the more ingrained, the more thorough change. You understand? And then you have your inner planets. Anything inside of Saturn is your inner planets. And those are the faster moving planets, and those you see more readily. You see their influences more readily. The moon is the closest, so your emotions, you see that happen more quickly than Pluto, which is your deep psychological, intense changes. See? It depends on how quickly the planet moves. You understand? So, yeah, that would be the same for the generations. And the moon is what, just speaking of the moon, that's the type of woman that most men are looking for. Whatever moon a man's sign is in, it indicates the woman that whatever moon that a man.
So if the moon and Venus is in the same place,
that means you would really be in tune with the same type of woman that you find attractive, you know.
Huh?
You said whatever house
Like
or
him,
sign.
right? He'd be a
For what?
The moon.
No, whatever sign.
The moon sign.
Whatever sign that the moon is in indicates a man's ideal woman. Ideal woman. And
But what happens to the 7th house?
That was the
her
traits. looking
Libra is
for,
just
right?
4.
yeah, you bring all that together.
Oh, okay.
Everything counts, you know. But you know that's just a little quirk to look at when you. And you know what? I've done thousands and thousands of charts, and I am always amazed at how many times when I do a chart, that person's mate falls in that sign. They fall in their Venus, wherever their Venus is in. I have found so many mates that fell in their Venus sign. It just amazes me. It amazes me, but that's how often they never happen. Yes. You just saw that, didn't you?
So you mean they're like
Me, I told you I was married to a Sagittarius for 25 years. That was before I even knew about this.
Oh, wow.
You know?
But Sister Maya,
Yeah.
you said, but we are supposed to look into the house of partnership. That's the perfected partner that we want. Whatever sign is in the house of partnership. But most of the time we get wherever the Venus falls in. Whatever house the Venus falls in
The first thing you look at
is where the Venus
is
falls.
the Venus.
So that's really the.
That's the yeah.
Okay.
That's the first thing. But like I told you with astrology, you know, fingerprints got nothing on an astrological chart because there's just so many things you can dig into. You know, you can start there. That's where you would start. But there's no end to what you could look at. You understand? And then think about bringing all that together. You know, like my Venus works in harmony with my moon. We haven't got to that. That's in a couple of weeks lessons. And when the part here where it says bringing it all together, the balancing part, week 6. You know, then you're going to start seeing what we call trines, conjunctions, sextiles.
Right.
You know, in other words, planets form certain angles to each other. You know, if you form, let's say a 60-degree angle is a sextile. And that's excitement. That means when two planets are operating at a 60-degree angle, there's excitement between the two. See? And when two planets are operating in a 120-degree angle, which is what is happening with let's see, what's happening here. That's happening with my Saturn and my Moon. That's harmonious. That means, you know, there's some good opportunity when these two interact. You know, that's a harmonious relationship. They're working in harmony with each other. And so it depends on the degree. If you got 90-degree angle, that's when you get the friction. That's the reason when I was talking about those crosses, we had nothing but opposition and friction, because the same modes are always going to be at a 90-degree angle. Like my rising sign is a cardinal, which is Aries. My sun sign is cardinals, which is Capricorn. They're at that 90-degree angle. They're going to be at friction with each other. Just like my Capricorn is going to be in friction with my Libra, because that's another cardinal sign. And then that's going to be in friction with the Cancer. The Cancer is going to be in friction with the Aries. And then the Aries is going to be in opposition with the Libra. And the Cancer is going to be in opposition with the Capricorn. That's why we get those crosses. When I talked about why that fixed cross was so important. Because when all those planets were sitting in that fixed cross, that's the cross of suffering and purging. That was suffering and purging for the world. The world was getting ready to go through all that friction and opposition. That's all those planets were sending out. Frictions and opposition.
And that's what's going to happen in May?
That's what happened in August the 11th. That's what's happening.
Was that doing the
reversal?
The Columbine thing?
Columbine. That's what all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That was the activator, you know. And then, like I said, each time that the sun moves into one of those fixed legs, then the element that sign represents will be how it'll show up in nature. You know, like it started in in Leo, which is fire. So we had the heat wave. Y'all remember?
Right.
Heat wave. We had the fires, the California, burning down half of California. The gun, like I said, the Columbine, the shots, the gunfire, fire. You know, the guy the stockbroker.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Keep it off.
That was August.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, or end of July. Or the very end of July, which is still Leo energy. You know, Leo energy, which is, fire. And then when it moved into Scorpio, in November, then we got the water. Because that's the floods, But a curious thing, I've been checking it out, and I've been trying to time it, and I've noticed that it takes about 2 months to really unfold. You understand? When it clicks in, then give it about 2 months, and you'll start seeing those things really start happening. You really will start seeing them happening.
I mean, like 2 months after August, that's when it really.
That's when you're really, that's about the time it took for the energy to really, fester and really come out. See? So don't try to see immediate. See? Especially when you're looking at your natal chart, because this indicates your internal. Your progress chart that I mentioned before will show you more about what's happening today. Okay? That'll show you more about what's happening today when you look at your progress chart. But when you're looking at your natal chart, don't expect to see, some immediate, give it a space, give it a, and the farther it's out, the bigger the influence, the longer it's going to take for you to actually see it happening. Okay? So, and the closer it is, the more surface it is, the more readily you'll see it happening. Okay. So, and then Chiron, I want to mention my Chiron, which sits on my midheaven line, and it's in Capricorn, which is the wounded healer, where somehow you were wounded in your in your childhood, and how you heal from those wounds. There'll be a way that you will show others how to heal from those same type of wounds. And Capricorn, Saturn, blackness. I was injured because of my complexion. Okay, I was born in Omaha, Nebraska, snowman land, People ask me, do they got black folks in Nebraska?
Wasn't Malcolm X?
That's the same thing I tell them. Malcolm X was born there. Yes.
You heard of the astrology of the Magi?
Of the Magi? It kind of sounds like what I was reading out of the...
They have a web page, and they said that where your Chiron is located is where your soulmate is.
Is that right? Wow. No, I didn't know that.
Well, how would you find your Chiron?
It's going to be when you calculate your chart, it's going to show up. It'll show up, okay? And it's also on. You'll find it in the ephemeris. If you figure in your chart from that, you can look up in your ephemeris and find it.
What symbol is that?
Huh?
That's what I'm
Symbol.
thinking.
Okay, with the O.
What symbol would the Chiron be?
It's
Or just a K?
Well, it came with a circle underneath. And getting back to this, so that was my problem. It's my complexion, growing up in snowman land, growing up in white area. So I suffered because of my color. But that's the wounds, how I heal from those wounds, that's the energy I'm going to use to help others see, how to heal from those same type of wounds. You understand? See how all that works, So, you have a question?
No.
Okay. So, and then the only thing else, okay, the midheaven, which we mentioned, the midheaven is your most public domain, and mine is also in Capricorn, and spiritual destiny, which is Mine is in Pisces. At, I think it's 1 degree in Pisces. See? And your spiritual destiny is the scariest part. Always opposite your spiritual destiny, which would be Virgo for me. 1 degree Virgo is what you call your mundane, your most mundane part. You know, it's the part, it's where you come from. You know, it's where you're coming from, and your spiritual destiny is where you're headed. See? So I learned my lessons of Virgo, you know, in another life somewhere. Now coming to this life, you know, now I'm heading toward the Pisces, fulfillment.
So you said where's the spiritual destiny? In the 12th house?
Mine is in the 12th house in Pisces. Okay?
So how would you?
That's also calculated.
Like Leo, that one right there.
Yeah.
Right there.
The symbol, here's the symbol here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's right there. 25 degrees.
Okay? And what happens is, and now, yes, and that's what, and see, when you get this, now that's my complete chart, and when you get this set up, when you get your chart set up, what happens is that you start, those angles I was talking about, you start seeing how things operate with each other at those angles, you know, and those are what gives you your personality charts, you see. See, I have a lot of oppositions, you know. I got opposition Sun and Uranus. I got oppositions Libra and Mars. Libra and Aries. I got the opposition of even my Moon and my Venus. You know, Gemini and Sagittarius. You know, so that just gives me good access into balancing. You know, because remember, balancing opposites is what makes you whole. You know, but there's a lot of in-betweens. Like I was talking about, those sextiles and those trines and those squares, you know. Those are things, those are little in-betweens till you get to that opposition, you know, to make that fullness and that wholeness, see. So as these planets interact with each other, that's what forms up your personality traits. That's what forms up your personality traits, okay? Like the first astrologer I went to, she said, your sun is like at a 3-way stop sign, you know, because you have your Aries energy is blocking it, your Libra energy is blocking it, you know, and then you've got your opposition with your Cancer energy. So as my sun tries to get out, all these things are interfering. See? But my job is to learn how to integrate those energies, you know, and make them work, make them all work together so that I can come full and whole, you know, so that there's nothing that can be sent at me that I can't deal with, you know, so I can deal with all of them. And then as we get into the transit planets, what happens is, like I said, they'll be circling. All these planets will be circling. And as they circle, they'll trigger. You know? Say if something comes around, one of the transits comes around at 6 degrees Jupiter, 6 degrees Aries, they activate my Jupiter. You know, and whatever my Jupiter do, my Jupiter is in opposition to my Saturn. See? So once my Jupiter gets activated by a transit, then it causes, you know, that energy goes over there to my 7th house, and it causes some interaction there, which is an opposition. It'll cause me to open up to what's going on over here. And so, you know, that's how when you think about the crystal we've been talking about, when we talk about the stars, that's where the twinkle comes in at. If you can imagine, this is energy, you know, if something hits here, zing, it zings here, then it zings here, zings up here, you know, because it really, 3 things need to happen in order for you to really see, in order for something to really be unfolding, you know. It's just not enough to have something hit your sun and it just, okay, I feel ya, you know, and it's done, you know. It's not enough, you know. That has to start off a chain reaction. And that's where the twinkle, twinkle, if you can imagine, that's energy, like a twinkling star or something. Something's been activated.
So, I got a question. What if the transits hit your 11th house? Your 11th house where there's nothing there, your house of groups and friends. And
Then that just gives me, you know, then
you're going to want to meet people.
Right, I can draw on that, see. And someone asked me in one of the classes about if you have nothing in your 11th house, what does that mean? And it does mean, that's kind of a sad thing, because it just means 11th house is your house of friends, groups, and activity. If you have nothing there, that means that you probably didn't receive very much validation, you know, as a child. That you were kind of off on your own, that no one, you didn't have very many friends, you didn't have, and then when the transit hits that area, then that opens up that energy to where you can access that energy and pull some friends or pull some group activity in.
But that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing, right?
Well, actually, none of it's bad. It just means growth, and growth is friction. Growth is not easy. Okay.
So your 11th house is the opposite of your creative house. Is that right? Your 5th house.
Right.
Is that right?
Right. Yes.
Is that spiritual destiny sign? Is that similar to the same as the North Node? Or?
Yes, that is. That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
That's what it is. That's the North Node. Okay. Okay. That's it. I mean, we cutting out on the program. Homework assignment. We're going to now. Well, this is going to cut off. But what I want you to do. Now, I told you I was going to have you put your planets in those houses. Did you guys bring your charts?
Yeah.
Okay. What you should have, like you said, you should have the red. You should have red in the first house. You should have yellow or orange in the second. Okay. You should have. Excuse me, you should have green.
I was like,
okay. Green, yellow, orange. Okay, blue. And then that should continue to repeat. Okay. Now, what I want you to do, I know I told you I was going to have you put your planets, but what I want you to do now on the side of that chart, I want you to start with the sun, and go, and I want you to put the sun and in the color of its element, like the sun, Leo, right?
Right.
So put the sun in red. Go on the side, Okay, can I see your chart here?
Yeah, I just said that's just
Like on the side right here. I want you to start right. Put a sun here. And then, like this, put the sun in red, okay? And then put sun, okay? And I want you to go down, boom.
Oh, you mean elements, with the elements still.
with the
Okay. Then what I want you to do is just go down. You got the sun, the moon, and then you've got
Rising sign.
Don't worry about the rising sign.
planets,
Mercury.
Yeah. Then you got Mercury,
Mars.
Venus,
Wait.
Mars,
Jupiter, Saturn,
Venus.
Saturn,
Uranus, Neptune.
and I'm running out of room, but come down and do Uranus, Neptune,
Pluto.
and Pluto. I want you to put them on the side where I showed you at, okay? In the color.
So all the planets.
In the color of all the planets. And then on the other side, I want you to put, remember when I put, I want you to write, down in the corner, I want you to write, see what I'm doing?
Oh,
Okay?
Earth.
Green.
Stability, would you say?
Let's stay with the sensitivity.
Oh, okay.
See what I'm saying? You
Okay.
understand?
okay. Yeah.
I want you to write that in the corner down there.
Red or orange would be.
And put it in the color.
Or yellow would be.
Put it all in the color that it indicates here. Okay? And then next week, we will start, we will start getting your own charts, putting your own planets in, just like I did here today.
So over there.
Okay, so yellow, orange would mean
That's water or air, isn't it?
air, right? But that means
And
mental,
if you
right?
know,
mental.
if you know already, you can start putting your planets in, if you want, if you know. And put them in the color. Put them
On the chart
Put
or
the,
on the
wait,
side?
now listen to this. Put the planet in the color that like it would be right here. But it's going to fall in a different sign, and you put the sign in the color of its own sign. You understand? Like if you have your Pluto in Leo, the Pluto should be blue,
Red.
but the sign should be red. You got that? No? You don't? But don't worry about that. I said if you want
And
to.
the
But that's why I'm having you do what you're doing now,
Right.
to be
well,
ready
you
for
had
that.
to do yours right. didn't you? The blue had to be spirituality, right? The water that represents
No,
spirituality,
emotions.
emotion.
Yeah, that's the element of the soul, as a matter of fact.
Just
Oh.
see.
Huh?
Just see.
Yeah, water's
Blue is the
emotions,
color
air
of the
is
sea.
just
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
it is.
Because the sky is
Earth is
blue and it's not
sensitivity.
really blue.
It fires
And
the
so
light.
is the ocean. They think it's blue and it's not really blue. It is deception. And if you're
The
Neptune,
Neptune thing.
Neptune is water. Okay, and that's the planet of deception.
Spirituality or
Right.
deception, yeah.
So all that'll start falling down. But
Go ahead. So on the bottom
Okay.
left.
So over here on the left hand side, we want
our physical alchemy with the fluidity of melanin through the elements of nature, balanced with the spiritual influence of the universal powers, guided by our ancestral spirits, equals our empowerment by magical means. And to demonstrate that, I brought this book. This is one of theirs. This is a source that is called the Melatonin Miracle. Okay? And I just wanted, this is the discoveries that they have made about how important melatonin is, as they put it. Okay, so I just wanted to read some of this to give you an indication of what they know and what they're using, what they're calling the miracle drug. A miracle. And don't be fooled about where they're getting this from. First off, you should see there, they show it's the pineal gland. See? That's the first picture they put. It said diagram of the brain highlighting the pineal gland, which produces melatonin.
Who is that from?
It's Walter, some MDs, PhD, William, I can't even pronounce their names, Carol Coleman, so where I got this, where I obtained this book from, is I used to work for a mental health counseling corporation. They had many psychiatrists on duty, and they would have their stacks of books, and one of the psychiatrists left, and he left this book, so I was able to get it. And first off, if you look at the table of contents, Part 1, Nature's Aging Reversing Hormone. Chapter 2, The Melatonin Miracle. Chapter 3, First Clues in the Hunt for the Aging Clock. Chapter 3, Finding the Aging Clock. Chapter 4, The Pineal Gland, Your Third Eye, which we call the first eye. Yeah, Chapter 5, Melatonin, Growing Young. Okay? Part 2 is Nature's Disease-Fighting Hormone. Chapter 6, The Immune System, Nature's Own Bodyguard. Chapter 7, A Powerful Protector and Treatment Against Cancer. Chapter 8, Melatonin for a Strong Heart. Chapter 9, Exciting Frontiers, The Promise of the Future. Part 3, Nature's Sex-Enhancing Hormone and Other Benefits of Melatonin. Chapter 10, Melatonin and Sex. 11, the stress-relieving hormone. Nature's Own Sleep Aid, Chapter 12. Chapter 13, Getting Back in Sync, Tips on Overcoming Jet Lag. Chapter 14, how to take melatonin, the right dosages. And the last one is the afterword toward a new paradigm of aging. They know how to use this stuff. You know, and they got plans for it too.
At least they think they do.
Yeah, they think they do.
Don't
They
they go
got
in and
plans.
get,
That don't
don't they
mean
do
their plans don't work.
melatonin for their own use? They go in and they use it as a dosage or something?
All this is what I'm telling you. This is their book.
Yeah.
You know, toting the miracles of it. You know, and how to use it for all of these things. Okay. It says in this book we will tell you how melatonin can help you to grow young, remain disease-free, retain your sexual vitality, get a better night's sleep, and enhance the quality of your life in a variety of other ways. We know that as you learn more about how melatonin actually performs these miracles, you will be eager to know precisely how you can take melatonin in order to achieve each of these benefits. We want you to know that all of the necessary information on dosages, along with precise instructions on when and how to take it, are provided for you in Chapter 14. And, yes.
The conversation went on earlier before you got here. The young man's, I was telling the young man, hey, I'm man, they're mankind.
Yes.
Do you understand now, young man?
I'm trying to.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
You the carbon seed.
That's right.
Okay?
Okay.
You the man.
And I've outlined a few passages that, you know, I want you to understand what they're saying about it, okay? And how they're using it. The pineal gland is a part of the body that, until recent years, has been little studied but long revered. For example, the Hindus attach mystical importance to the pineal, referring to it as the body's third eye. And in a sense, that's what it is. The pineal gland, which contains pigment cells similar to those found in our eyes, is light sensitive and reacts to periods of light and dark transmitted to it through our eyes. The pineal controls the body's biological clock, the internal mechanism that tells us when it's time to sleep and when it's time to wake up. But the pineal regulates more than our sleep pattern. It regulates the rhythm of life itself. This is their material, okay? The pineal gland manufactures and operates through a hormone called melatonin. Melatonin is instrumental in establishing our daily rhythms from infancy on. Expectant mothers pass melatonin to their developing babies through the placenta. Although infants don't manufacture their own supply of melatonin until the 3rd or 4th day of life, melatonin is present in breast milk. Melatonin levels peak during childhood. During adolescence, melatonin levels drops off, triggering a rise in other hormones, which in turn signal to the body that it is time to enter puberty. As we age, our melatonin levels continue to decrease, with the steepest decline occurring from about age 50 on. By age 60, our pineal glands are producing half the amount of melatonin they did when we were 20. Not so coincidentally, as melatonin levels drop, we begin to exhibit serious signs of aging. For reasons that we will explain in more detail in later chapters, we believe that this drop in melatonin levels happens and the downward spiral, known as aging, occurs because the pineal gland, the aging clock, breaks down. Okay? And let me see, I got 25, 27. The melatonin is the key to resetting the clock. It says in animal studies, we have shown that melatonin supplements given at the right time can stop and reverse the aging process. And believe me, this is what they're doing. I listened to a show, Art Bell.
Yeah.
You remember? He said people were coming up to him and stopping him, saying, "Oh, you look 10 years younger." You know, he feels younger. This is what he's doing. You know, this is what he's taking. It says, given at the right time can stop and reverse the aging process. And one early study we gave one group of old mice melatonin in their night drinking water and compared their physical characteristics and behavior to an identical group of mice who did not get melatonin. 6 months later, the untreated mice continued to show signs of aging. They developed patchy bald spots, they grew shriveled, they lost neuromuscular coordination, they lost immune and thyroid responsiveness, and they slowed down until they all eventually died of cancer, which is the typical pattern of aging and death for this particular breed of mice. The melatonin-treated mice experienced a dramatically different fate. To our astonishment, they seemed to grow young, practically overnight. Their fur grew thick and luxurious, their bodies grew slim and supple, and their youthful motor activity returned. Tests showed that their immunity against disease had vastly improved. Their energy levels increased, and much to our amazement, their sexual vigor was restored. What's even more exciting is that the melatonin mice lived, on average, 30% longer than the untreated mice, which in human terms is a gain of about 20 to 25 years. Even more astonishing was the fact that the melatonin mice did not succumb to the deadly cancer that invariably affects their breed. See? And there's more. Ancient healers and Native American shamans or medicine men seem to have intuitively understood the link between physical and emotional health, and they often attributed illness of the body to an underlying illness of the psyche or of the